There are secrets out there, guys, performance marketing secrets, and knowing just one or two of them can light up your funnels. Let's go. This is Performance Marketing Insiders. I'm Chris Mechanic. Join me as we go deep into the secrets of the world's elite marketing minds. Performance Marketing Insiders is sponsored by Web Mechanics, the AI-driven performance agency that makes you smarter. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Performance Marketing Insiders. I'm really excited for today's guest. This is a longtime marketer. This is a person who's worked agency side. He's worked brand side. I'm sure he's probably done his own things, but he's just been there, done that in a lot of ways. He's super energetic and super passionate about marketing, and he's a leader with decades of experience. He is currently SVP of Marketing and Sales at Cognition Financial, and I think that it's going to be an amazing episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Andrew Kling.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate being here today.
Absolutely. I know that we've got a lot of awesome stuff to share with everyone listening today, but you know that we like to cut right to the chase, and we like to hear some of your best secrets right out of the gate. So lay it on us, man. What's one of your best go-to secrets that just drives a lot of wins for you?
Yeah, man. I think for me, Chris, I think it really comes down to better data and trying to understand, it gets super easy to focus on the front end metrics, right? Like what's your cost per lead? How much are you driving from a lead generation standpoint? And, when you start to see those leads come in, it's very, by its very nature, it's exciting to sort of see and get engaged with. But it's also really important to think about, from a data perspective, how am I doing through the funnel, and what am I doing to test and learn and optimize, and how am I measuring all the way from that initial lead to what actually is a conversion and a purchase, whether that's a purchase, whether that's a meeting, whether that's a long-term sale. How am I getting to that ultimate goal? And, I think in today's marketplace, it's more challenging than ever. I mean, you're starting to see some pretty big shifts with a focus on privacy of the individual, whether that's on the business side or the consumer side, that are really making us sort of think about less about lead generation and more about the relationship. So how are you continuing to keep people engaged? How are you segmenting and nudging folks through the funnel? Are there any particular sources that are higher quality as far as results go? Well, what content is driving conversion through that funnel and nudging people along? How are you reducing friction? Can you identify the friction points in your funnel where people may be getting stuck and find new ways to sort of new messaging or new creative or new opportunities to open up those places or move people past them?
So if I'm hearing you right, so it sounds like you're basically saying, hey, us marketers have a tendency to get really excited when the lead comes in and we're like, woohoo, we got a bunch of leads. But we don't do a very good job sometimes following them all the way through to the sale. Yeah.
And that really requires good data. And so being able to, have sort of a full view of your funnel from what sources are coming in, and then how they're moving through that, how those leads are moving through the funnel to your ultimate conversion, really comes down to how am I able to visualize data and understand the data along that funnel.
So I agree with you. In general, I think that there's a lot of meat on the bone still, so to speak. For as much as we optimize the front end, the traffic and the campaigns and the targeting and all these different things, and even the landing pages, I think that there's a lot of room for improvement on the post conversion. Why do you think that's the case? Why is it just because it's difficult, or is it because marketers are just so hyper focused? Is it the way that we're compensated, or measured? Like, why do you think that's such a rampant problem?
I mean, I think it is kind of all of the above, right? Like you end up, you do have teams that are compensated based upon the number of leads or the volume of leads that are coming in the door, or the cost per lead that's coming in, or the cost per marketing qualified lead, right? And not really focused on what's the ultimate goal. And it's hard with so many different sort of channels out there and places where you can generate volume, whether it's from affiliate marketing, social, search, email, direct mail, TV, radio. You've got a pretty fragmented marketplace, and trying to pull all that data together and look at the touch points along your own funnel to conversion, and being able to say, okay, this is a radio lead. How is it converting? What does it cost me? How many of them convert? And ultimately, is this a good channel for me to be in? That can be challenging at times. And honestly, I think we're also pretty prone to, if it doesn't work once, moving on. And I think there are times when some channels deserve better exploration. And I've sort of, always cautioned my team and the CFOs that I've worked with who look at cost per lead, or further down the funnel, cost per conversion and cost per sale, to not just sort of see that initial test as, as codified, right? Because sometimes channels need more exploration, and sometimes you may have a channel that that costs really high on the lead. From a lead perspective, but on the back end, when you're way down the funnel and you finally get to that cost per sale, actually looks pretty good.
That's fascinating. I want to talk about exploring channels in a little more detail, but before we switch to that topic, what's something like fairly simple and fairly actionable and fairly easy that folks could do right now to get to a place where they are doing a better job of measuring, understanding, and optimizing toward everything that happens, like after the form submission or after the phone call?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, and that really comes down to making certain that you as a marketer have really a source of truth that you're referring to, and consistently looking at data sort of on a daily, weekly basis to understand how those numbers are coming in and what they look like. It's not a real, we don't live in sort of a set it and forget it sort of world anymore. And so being able to be on top of those numbers, understand what they mean, and refer to them frequently, not only sort of can help improve your program, but it also identifies issues more quickly and allows you to troubleshoot if an issue does arrive.
Yeah. And you probably would have said, this is very elementary. I'm sure you might have thought like, hey, this is too easy. But we love UTM parameters. We love tagging our links, and we love like the UTM grabber where it'll parse that first touch UTM and just save it like as a cookie, first party cookie, and then post it to CRM like that plus the last touch. I think having those UTM parameters just like in CRM, like on the record, so you can just search like, hey, UTM equals Facebook. Show me all my Facebook.
Yep. I think that's the key. No matter what channel, what creative, making certain that each individual creative is tagged, making certain each channel has its own sort of nomenclature, and that you're able to understand it, review it, and really translate it into a meaningful result that you can then communicate out to the organization and make decisions on is super helpful.
Yeah, and I mean it's not a perfect solution. It's still really tricky because you still get a lot of like, hey, saw your ad on Facebook and then just Google searched you. So like that'll show up as Google organic, but really it was influence from Facebook.
Yeah.
But that's fascinating, man. We could talk for hours on end about this stuff. I want really quickly before we get into to your day-to-day world. Let's talk about channel exploration, because that's something that we do a lot of.
Yeah.
And oftentimes clients will say, they'll be like, let's spend $1,000 and see what happens, or let's spend $5,000 and see what happens. And we'll reluctantly be like, okay, let's try it. And so we'll set up, the best campaign we can within the time that we have. And then sometimes it'll work and be encouraging, and other times it won't work and it's not encouraging. And then usually the clients will say, hey, let's forget about Quora altogether, or, whatever the channel is, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys approach channel exploration? I like that term.
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. For me, I like to think of it as not necessarily channel exploration, but budget exploration. And so I tend to live by, and it's dependent upon size of budget and, your category to a certain extent. You have to decide sort of what's right for you. I like to think of having some form of, 10 to 20% of my budget in testing at all times. And, I think for me, if that means we're continuing to just sort of hammer away, that testing budget's for testing. And that means, on the first shot, if we haven't made, to use your example, core work, it still has, it may still have life in it. So we continue to use that budget and continue to explore how we could potentially get that to work, especially if we know things like competitors are there or our target audience is there. If they're there, usually there's a way to find a path forward in that opportunity. And I think, it's really easy to sort of say, okay, we spent $1,000. That's all I was willing to bet. And I need to let it go. And, if you're looking at it and you do have, customers and competitors there, they're probably finding a way to make it work. So there's an opportunity there, and you need to continue to explore it. And using 10 to 20% of your budget, I think, is a fair risk. It also helps your program continue to grow and expand. And as marketers, we like that. We like the idea that, we can continue to grow our budget and keep it productive. But we're only going to know if we can do that by testing new channels on an ongoing basis.
That makes a lot of sense. So 10 to 20% of the budget. I like your concept of like, they are there, like the buyers are there on that platform. There must be some way. Like, we will figure it out. We will change the targeting. We will mess with the pixel. We will, try wacky ads if we have to.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I think some of it too, like, you can't just look at the response to get to your point earlier about how do you start to look at and explore channels that may not have a metric that's directly attributable, right? How do you look at indirect opportunities? And so, if you're using a mass channel like radio, or you're, a mass channel like TV, or you're at a trade show, or you happen to be working with a social influencer, right? Using using indirect data, so site traffic and what happens on your site during those events, or just shortly after those events occur, can really help you make a decision around whether or not this should stay in the media mix or move out of the media mix.
Interesting. So expand on that a little bit. What do you mean? Like, what would you see in site traffic, like with the successful, like what would be encouraging?
Yeah. I mean, if I saw a spike in data and if I saw a spike in site traffic and more lead form fill outs when I was at a particular trade show, or if I aired on a podcast that I know my audience listens to, if I saw a spike in site traffic around the time the podcast aired, and then potentially more lead form fill outs, I might say, okay, there's something to explore here. Let's go ahead and continue to air on this podcast and see what happens during that time.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, I have 100 questions for you, man. But tell me, if you can, think of any stories like where you guys have posted some wins or achieved some sort of a lift, like by either channel exploration or like looking post the lead form submission, because those are the two things we've been talking about.
I think a few of the big wins are one, understanding the value of potentially mass channels or newer channels like social or social influencers, and really, I'll sort of speak to something. I had a client when I was agency side, and the cost on a CPM basis for TV is extraordinarily high, and I think they were extremely conservative in how they approached their marketing. They didn't have a tremendous amount of budget, and for me, it took a lot of sort of convincing, or it took a lot of support about their audience and where their audience was to sort of get them to agree to a $10,000 test of television. And I think what we learned first of all was that you air TV, and you can see an explosion of site traffic, and especially if you have a good, solid product. And this was this was a product, not a service. And we literally saw site traffic increase sixfold.
Wow.
And we didn't see the same happen with lead forms, right? But we did see lead submissions immediately post those airings double by 2x. And from a data perspective, we were able to look at lead forms submitted in the time post the airings, and whether or not those people eventually converted, using their essentially their name, email address, phone number, and seeing if those folks eventually converted. And it turned out that on a cost per basis, over the top television actually performed very well, and in some ways performed as well as search, which is sort of a down funnel metric too. And so we were able to look at what would happen with those leads and the eventual conversion. We also did go back and look at our branded search traffic too, and saw a spike in that, and saw people coming in from search, from our branded terms, and we're able to use that as part of the analysis too in the end. So I think that's
interesting.
That's a nice win when you can, especially when you're agency side and your client side, and you can sort of, or agency side and you're talking with clients, and you can say, hey, look, we don't have direct evidence that these commercials worked, but at the same time, we can tell that video works by using more indirect evidence and see the sort of conversion on the back end.
That's fascinating. Wow. So for $10,000, you 6x the traffic and 2x the lead forms.
Yeah.
And that probably like showed as a spike. Like it was probably like a big spike, and then it stopped like a couple days later or whatever it was.
Yeah, the tail is pretty short on it, but you can you definitely see the search traffic and the site traffic increase upon airing.
Well, and the search traffic is really fascinating too, because like that. So like, just to bring it back for the listeners. So there's, say you're running display, like you run display, you're going to see a spike in traffic, but usually it's like pretty low quality traffic. Like it's not going to convert at a high rate. But with TV or OTT or CTV, you get some of that, like you get that same traffic spike, and some of it might be low quality, but then some is going to turn around and Google you And that brand search traffic probably converts at like 10% or 15%.
Yeah.
Just like other branded search traffic.
Yep.
So that's maybe really the hidden value of those like mass awareness style channels that are the bane. Like there's a lot of performance folks out there that are like, why are you doing that? Like you can't track it. But then some of the biggest brands in the world you see are always, advertising in these channels, even though they can't track it. And that's probably, I guess, the reason why.
Yeah. And then I'll give you,
go
ahead. I was going to say, yeah, that is why direct benefit and lift their business when they're on TV versus off. I'll give you another one, which is directly related to where I'm at now, which is, student loan lending is a seasonal business. So, we really see our peak in the month of July and August. And we see a mini peak just sort of post Christmas and into January. And so, if you're just looking at the cost per acquisition numbers and you're trying to make decisions about what works in that time, first of all, if you're just on for 6 weeks in the summer and just on for 6 weeks in the winter, like you're not going to do a lot of business. And so, we're doing two things right now, which is, we've got a sweepstakes that we use as sort of our evergreen content for year-round lead generation. And the big win there is that, as that sweepstakes, people raise their hands as interested in learning about, how to pay for college and how to do it responsibly and learning the role of student loans in how you pay for college. Then they also get sort of a soft introduction to our brands. And we have found that, by maintaining contact and keeping folks engaged through our sweepstakes and the site content around, how to pay for college in a smart and intelligent way. And in conjunction with our loan brands, we found that that's reduced our cost per booked loan by about 50%.
Wow. The sweepstakes more so, or the educational content, or the combo of both?
The combo of both. We're able to generate leads using the sweepstakes in a very cost-effective manner. And then those leads are pretty well qualified because people are interested in how to pay for college.
Right.
And then, transitioning them or doing a handoff to a loan brand, has been a successful solution here.
Wow. That's interesting. I should probably try that. So it's like, basically the playbook is a really juicy offer, because the sweepstakes is really juicy. It's probably like, hey, we'll pay, we're going to pay for somebody's first year of college, some lucky winner.
Right.
So you get leads for probably $1 or $2, and then you just nurture them with that educational content. And that's not only a way to keep them engaged, but also it's going to throw off a lot of signals, like who's interested, who's not, like who's reading, who's clicking these emails,
Exactly. Yeah. And, in today's sort of shifting marketplace, right, where privacy is on the rise, having that sort of initial lead come in a very cost-effective way, and then being able to build a relationship and, identify who's truly interested and getting them to then convert is super important.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's pretty fire, Andrew. I will tell you.
Thanks.
I'm going to go check out your funnels right after this. But hey, so let's talk a little bit more about Cognition.
Yeah.
What are some of your challenges that you're going through? Like, what's keeping you up at night?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is search and the cost of search. We on the student loan side, there's some pretty big competitors. You look at like the Sallie Mae's of the world, most of the banks, and they're already spending a fair amount in search and driving lead cost up. And then you also have affiliates, right? So you have folks like NerdWallet and other affiliates who, really are in the business of just building traffic to their site. And, for them, the way that they're monetizing it is they are selling spaces on, essentially ranking people in the marketplace, right?
Right.
And then driving consumers to their site, as they position themselves as the expert. And from there, that lead traffic eventually converts to one of the folks that they're recommending on their site. And so they're getting paid on the back end. And so, both affiliates and some of our larger competitors continue to drive the cost per acquisition in search up. And we've seen it just explode, particularly in the last 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So that's sort of our biggest challenge. And that's why we moved to a model where we could have more evergreen content and a sweepstakes where, you've got hand raisers, but at a more cost-effective lead gen cost.
Yeah. And the nerd wallets of the world, like by sending traffic to those top 10 listing style pages, they probably have better landing page engagement, lower and essentially lower click costs.
Yeah.
And then they're making money like instantly on the back end. So they're probably paying $10 a click and making like 12 or 15 or 20,
Oh yeah, definitely. So
interesting. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. But I think your technique sounds like a winner, because if you can pay the same amount for a click, but with a sweepstakes offer, like that'll convert really high too, and also get like really good engagement scores.
yeah.
Are your competitors running stuff like that?
Yeah, pretty much everybody is now. Our site is, smartborrowing.org has been around since 2007. That's been a focus, getting people to really think about how to borrow smart for college has been a focus of this company for a long, long time. And helping kids find new ways to pay for college has been a focus of this company for a long, long time. But I think, you've seen a lot of people adopt that same strategy, and, because it works.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's probably room to innovate, because like some innovative chap, maybe it was you, came up with the sweepstakes offer, and then now everybody's doing it. So it's like, what's the next offer? Like, what's the next angle?
Yeah, I think, what we've, I think it comes down to also, I think the good news is that having a sweepstakes that provides some form of scholarship or, tuition reimbursement is a great strategy. And I think, the jury's still out. We have competitors out there who offer $100,000 or paying for an entire year of college and things like that. And I think, what we found is that you can sort of work with, you can work with your own program and your own metrics and still generate good qualified leads without having to go too extravagant. But I think you're right. Like, there's an opportunity to do something more, and hopefully, we'll be the ones to launch that and find the next thing that drives more volume, more cost effectively outside of search.
Yeah. Have you heard of the law of shitty click-throughs?
No, what's the law of shitty click-throughs?
I don't know who came up with it, but it's essentially a concept of like, somebody innovates, and comes up with something, and it works extremely well for a short period of time. But then over time, as all the copycats come, like the clicks start getting shittier and shittier.
Yeah. Makes sense, right? Things degrade over time.
Yeah. But Andrew, I'm loving this combo. I wish we had like 2 more hours. But take us through like a brief sort of chronology of your, career to date. Like, how did you arrive at where you are? Like, what were your steps along the journey?
Yeah, I mean, um, I think I'm lucky to a certain extent. I've grown up in brand and performance marketing since the start of my career. You know, I graduated, from a small liberal arts college in the Midwest and moved to the Northeast and was lucky enough to get a job at an agency here in Boston, primarily focused on PR in the beginning. And was always interested, I mean, I think, our generation is one of the first that really focused on digital. And so at that agency, we had a digital group and a direct marketing group, and they sort of worked hand in hand. And I was able to move over that group and got engaged at an early age, just in focused on like, how are we driving results? Basically taking sort of the the structure or architecture for direct marketing and applying it to digital.
And that was circa when, like early 2000s, kind of?
No, it was to put a date on it, it would have been about 1996.
Wow. So you were early to the game.
Yeah.
That's even earlier than me.
Well, I guess I just dated myself. So, I moved from I worked at that agency for a couple of years, moved to another agency, that at the time was owned by Arnold. And in the early 2000s, that agency was absorbed up into Arnold and became Arnold One. And that's where I got my first sort of experience with not just digital, but also TV, and how TV can start to impact performance. And then when I left Arnold, I went and worked at a skunkworks at Fidelity eBusiness. And at that point in time, in 2005, we were focused on how do you use Web 2.0 concepts and apply them to digital applications, tools, things like that, to, just explore them and see what worked, and what was useful and what provided value to the organization and to the end users. Mm-hmm. And then I actually did my first stint at Cognition. Then I took a job, at what was then called First Marblehead Corporation. And that was really my first brand job. And my job was to take some of those Web 2.0 concepts and work with some proprietary brands and test them and test new channels, test things like TV and see how they performed. We found that they performed very well. And so those brands grew very, very quickly. And at that point in time, most of Cognition or First Marblehead's business was focused on white labeling loan products for financial institutions. So the Chases of the world, the Citizen Banks of the world, et cetera. And, these proprietary brands we found performed very well on their own, for a lot of reasons. They were more digitally focused. They used TV and search as sort of the pitch catcher sort of relationship, which worked very well at that point in time. And they were very focused on speaking in the voice of the consumer. Bank brands have their own voice. It's a very fixed voice. And we were able to speak more directly with students and parents at that point in time. And we saw the three brands at the time, Strive Student Loans, Monticello, and Laurel, grow very quickly. And then I left to go to Havas during the first financial crisis that, started in 2008, but really impacted our business in 2009, 2010. So I went back to an agency called Havas Edge, that of course is, it's an agency that's very focused on performance marketing, and ran a strategy group that was, sort of located across, they were sort of geographically dispersed, both East, West Coast, and Central. And, was there for a fair amount of time, and then was asked to come back here to take over marketing and sales. And that's sort of
interesting.
So that was my
so you kind
trajectory.
You kind of keep going back and forth from the dark side. Like you go agency and then brand, and then agency and then brand.
Yeah. I mean, I think, the great thing about that has been that there's a lot to learn on the agency side. Agencies are focused on they're focused on helping you grow your business, right? And, they are plugged into more channels than I myself or my team at my scale could manage. And so being able to leverage their expertise and knowledge and, find new opportunities has been invaluable client side. But then going back to an agency certainly expands, expands the opportunity for, not only to work with different brands and different categories in, both B2B and direct to consumer and B2C. But it also then allows you to bring sort of a larger team to bear on, whether it's media or whether it's, content strategy and social, or whether it's analytics, analytics data, or even so analytics data, like having the opportunity to work with much larger teams and get exposure to more brands, getting an understanding of how those channels perform for brands has been invaluable.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. Well, hey, if you ever get the itch and you want to come back agency side, you know who to call.
Thanks, Chris.
So, that's really awesome. What do you like to do for fun? How do you stay? How do you avoid burnout? I'll put it like that.
That's a great question. I think I'm a cyclist, so I spend a lot of time on the back of a bike. Manager for my son's hockey team, which keeps me pretty busy and hopping too, and do a lot of travel, sort of explore new places with my family, new countries, find, opportunities to sort of unplug from work and, here, the Boston area and get away.
Nice. That's awesome. What are some of your recent and or like favorite destinations?
I think favorite destination is the Philippines. I've been a lot. I have a bunch of friends over there, and I like to go visit them. I haven't taken the kids yet, but that's on tap.
Wow.
Most recent destination was Honduras. Went there last April, and did some diving.
Wow.
Awesome.
Okay, that's more exotic. I thought you were thinking like, we're going to go to Florida.
Well, ask me again in a month when winter set in here in the Northeast, and you may find me in Florida.
Cool. Well, I got two other quick questions for you, just from the grab bag of questions. One of my favorites. If you were to start a side hustle, what would that side hustle be?
I think it would probably be if I were to start a side hustle, that side hustle would probably be using the knowledge that I've gained in marketing to start my own business and, sell some form of product that I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
Find a way to move the needle for it.
Yeah. You could probably be an affiliate. Just like put up a nice sweepstakes offer and run Pinterest traffic to it.
Exactly.
And sell them to Fannie Mae or whoever.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. And then the other one is books or influential reads that have had a big impact on your life. or influencers even. Like I love Peter Drucker, for instance.
Yeah, I'll give you. So there are two books that I love and continue. So there are two books that I love and I continue to recommend to interns, new employees, and ask them to read them if they're excited to read them. And one is called Fumbling the Future, which is essentially how Xerox created the personal computer and totally dropped the ball on it. And the other one is Dealers of Lightning, which is also about Xerox. And it's really about the Palo Alto Research Center and the creation of PARC and why it was important and what it did. And it's an interesting sort of view of one company who wasn't in, who basically was in a category. They were in the business of copying things, right? And they really innovated in that. And they were the first to really explode onto the market and grow a business and had a very unique business model. And so, Fumbling the Future is really about the missteps that they took and something that could have migrated them away from just copiers, and had, and essentially, cost them their future. But, Dealers of Lightning is really a book that focuses on, the true focus on innovation at a company and how, you could potentially move a company forward using innovation and research center and finding exploring new ideas, new opportunities, and moving your business forward. Unfortunately, we all know where Xerox is today, so clearly execution is key.
Yeah, right.
in that too, but they're both interesting reads.
Awesome. Well, we'll definitely include those in the show notes. For everyone listening, if you enjoyed this, drop us a like, a comment, share with a friend. Andrew, it's been awesome having you. I really, really enjoyed it. I honest to God, could keep talking to you for 2 more hours and enjoy every minute of it.
Appreciate it, Chris. It's been great speaking with you too.
Yeah, give us a little plug. Like anybody that's listening, if they're in the market for student loans or if they want to learn more about you, where can they go to find more?
They can go more to find out about us, about Cognition Financial at our main website. We have 2 proprietary brands, Union Federal and Custom Choice student loans. I think both of those, if you're looking for a student loan right now and you have a student that's in college right now, we have some of the lowest fixed rates in the industry. And check us out.
Nice. All right, Andrew. Well, thank you very much, man. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us today. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at performancemarketinginsiders.com. This podcast is sponsored by Web Mechanics, the performance agency that makes you smarter, offering AI-driven search, paid social, analytics, and conversion rate optimization for financial services, health, B2B, and SaaS brands that know. Hey guys, exclusive for listeners of this podcast, you can get a performance marketing assessment for free. And this isn't some cookie cutter automated report. It lays out detailed, specific things you can do right now to unlock limitless growth and nirvana level personal satisfaction. To claim your free assessment, just go to performancemarketinginsiders.com/audit and you'll have your customer report within just a few days.